At The Brain Possible, we are dedicated to exploring all the paths to healing and what that healing looks like. Today, as we continue our journey, we're delighted to speak with Jodi Cohen. Jodi is the author of Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body: 5 Steps to Calm Anxiety, Sleep Better, and Reduce Inflammation to Regain Control of Your Health. She's also the founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, where she has helped over 50,000 clients heal from brain related challenges, including anxiety, insomnia, and autoimmunity. On this podcast, she'll share her wisdom with us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what drew you to this work?
Yeah, I think necessity is the mother of invention. I first got into nutrition through my second child. I had a really easy first child and just assumed I was a great mom, and had another one 22 months later and realized I just got lucky. And he had no impulse control, no focus, was all over the place. I kept taking parenting classes and thinking it was just my parenting. And then we were at a birthday party, and another mom was complimenting me on how well behaved he was acting. And then someone passed out goldfish crackers as a snack. He Jekyll Hyded and took off. And after I brought him back, she said, my brother was on Ritalin his whole life, and it turned out he was just allergic to weird foods. Maybe it's food. So I took him to a nutritionist and found out he was really allergic to corn, soy, and dairy. Our big cue with him was look at my nose, and he couldn't. He was all over the place. The next day, he could look at our nose. And I thought, this is insane. I mean, this was such a source of frustration and stress. And moms are mean. They're really judgmental. Like, if your kid's not behaving, they really assume that it's your fault, and they're very unkind. And it had just caused me such angst for a couple of years that I thought, God, I have to learn more about this. I have to help other people. If it's as easy as changing the diet, this could bring anxiety levels way down. So I went back, got a degree in nutrition, was trying to help other parents with kind of squirmy kids. And it's really hard to assess a kid who's all over the place. So I learned this handy technique called muscle testing, where it's like the 80-20 rule. It helps you really delineate what's effective very quickly. And that wound up being helpful when my next kind of rock bottom hit. My then husband was severely, severely depressed, and it became pretty obvious that he might die on my watch. And so my friends finally staged an intervention and said, you need to get him professional help. You need to move him to a residential treatment facility. And I did. I found a good one. And once I knew that he was safe, and it wasn't my job to keep him safe, it was finally safe to collapse. And I hit hard. I could barely get out of bed. The kids were 5 and 7. I was suddenly a single mom. I had a job. I was class parent, and I would wake up with them, make them breakfast, pack their lunch, take them to school, come home, set the alarm for pickup. And I kept trying. I knew nutrition. I knew what was supposed to help. I was ingesting all the right things, and nothing was really moving the needle. And so luckily, a friend that I had just helped do a big fundraiser with she liked essential oils. She brought over a thank you gift and said, you have been so high stress, which is high cortisol, which causes systemic inflammation. I bet your gut is such toast that nothing is actually getting assimilated. Oils are kind of cool because you can put them on your skin and they get into your system that way, or you can smell them. This might help you. And I thought, great, I'll try anything, why not? And I muscle tested the box because that was about the level of effort I was able to put out at the time. And I got a really strong yes, there is something in here that will help your adrenals. And I was like, okay, this could be good. So I was trying to drill down, and normally I would come up with one supplement, maybe 2. I kept getting the same 5 oils, no matter how many times I tested. And that stumped me for a moment until I realized, oh, wait a minute, these are liquids. I can combine them. And I was like, oh, that seems obvious. So I grabbed a shot glass in my kitchen, kind of tested each bottle, 7 drops of this one, 5 of this one, made a blend, put it on my adrenals, on my low back, which seemed the obvious place to put it, and kind of felt like me. It was like the phone glitches, you reboot it, and suddenly it's working. I'm like, wow, I could go running. I could go to the supermarket. I could clean the house. I could do the laundry, all the things that felt, honestly, it felt hard to walk up a flight of stairs. I really wasn't doing much of anything those days. So I had this crazy productive day, felt like myself. It's not uncommon for anxiety during the day to correlate with insomnia at night. So I'd typically get my kids to bed and then clock watch, oh, it's 9. Oh, it's 10. Oh, it's 11. Somewhere between 10 and 11, I thought, I wonder, I know physiologically that the nasal passageway gets pretty close to the pineal gland, which controls the release of melatonin. Like, I wonder if I could do something to help with my insomnia. So I made up another remedy. Barely even remember falling asleep. I remember my 5-year-old waking me up, and that was probably the best night of sleep I got. And I kept thinking, okay, this is working. It's really weird. I'm not sure why it's working, but it's working. I'm just going to keep making things up and seeing how I do. And when I started to feel better, a lot of my friends were curious. They're like, all right, we want to try it. Like, that sounds fun. And it just seemed like this quirky hobby. And so I would share things with them. They're like, all right, this is working on everyone. Like, you should do something with this. And that was the first point that I really went online and researched and realized, okay, no one's really looking at oil blends in this way. And the way that they're presenting it makes it seem incredibly complicated. Like, I was almost grateful that I didn't have the mental capacity to start with research, which is my normal default, because I would have assumed I was unqualified. And so it just kind of went from there. There was an event. It was really affordable to be a vendor. We kind of proof of concepted it. We sold out. I had a background in journalism. I like to write and connect dots. I'd go back and reverse engineer and research, okay, why is this combination of oils working so well? And I just kind of put it out there and would fill orders when the kids went to sleep. At a certain point, I hired a friend to help me with fulfillment. Then, my kids got into middle school and I wasn't as cool to hang out with. So I had a lot more time on my hands. So I started, hiring people and trying to grow the business. But the book is really kind of a compilation of my past decade in recognizing this is what seems to move the needle in clinical practice. Blends seem to be better than single oils because when you use blends, you combine the benefit of more than one oil. And there's a specific way that seems to be the most beneficial to use them. You don't need to change anything else you're doing. You don't need to change your diet. You don't need to radically change your lifestyle. It's just a nice addendum. It's, a small pivot with a big impact.
Okay, so how does inhaling essential oils impact the brain?
Yeah, what most people don't realize is it's actually very hard to get any kind of remedy into the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Blood-brain barrier is a really strong security system. Like, you can't even do chemo in the brain because the molecules are too big.
Yeah, I think I heard that.
Yeah. So what's interesting, everyone talks about how essential fatty acids, omega-3s, are great for the brain. It's because they're super small and fat soluble. It's like the ambulance can't save a life if it can't get to the car accident through traffic. Nothing can actually help heal the brain if it can't get through the blood-brain barrier. So oils, because of their chemical nature, can actually cross through the blood-brain barrier and start to balance different regions of the brain. The other thing people don't realize is that nose cells are actually brain cells. If you look at a diagram of, where the nasal cavity goes, it actually goes through the cribriform plate directly into the brain. And smell, just because of its survival supportive mechanisms, we smell food, we smell water, we smell predator odor, we smell fire. It actually has more immediate access to the emotional part of the brain, the limbic brain, than any of our other senses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, and then what about our hormones?
Well, it's interesting. The way I kind of look at it is things in the body are like dominoes, right? If you push one lever, it kind of triggers another lever. Like, our hormones are really controlled by our hypothalamus, right? That's kind of the CEO of the endocrine system. And then it tells the pituitary, which is the COO, to then signal the other endocrine hormone, organs, sorry, like the adrenals, the thyroid, the sex organs. So if the hypothalamus, which is doing a lot of things, it's constantly taking in stimulus in the body. What's the blood sugar? What's the temperature? what's the threat level, what's the hormone level in the body. If that's kind of off kilter, it doesn't actually send the right signals to the body. So you can, in essence, rebalance the hypothalamus with oils. There's a blueprint for everything. There's a blueprint for healthy tissue. That's actually how stem cells kind of know to grow into a liver cell or a pancreas cell. They follow the blueprint. And you can use plants, and humans are biofamiliar. We have similar blueprints. So just like you can combine colors, like red and blue, you get purple, add a little white, it makes it more lavender. You can combine plants to kind of match the blueprint of healthy organ tissue. And you can do that with the brain. So you can do that with the hypothalamus. And once the hypothalamus returns to balance, then that often helps to balance the other organs. The other thing with hormones, it's all about kind of the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, but then also making sure that the old hormones actually leave the body and don't get recycled. So you can use oils to support all of the organs of detoxification to make sure that, like, old estrogen actually exits the system and doesn't get recycled and throw off the balance of other hormones.
Oh my goodness. Sounds like that's a lot for
Oh,
me.
sorry. Well, no, I mean, and that's why there's a whole book. Like, it's
Yes.
not a 10-minute quick conversation, but
Yeah.
I get into really specific detail and try to really simplify it in the book.
Yeah. No. So I just mean it's a lot because I don't understand every single thing you're talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But no, but it sounds like there's so much more to these oils than I had, thought until recently and started digging into them. But I still don't, I'm not that familiar with all the different things. But you say essential oils can help heal the brain, which is very important to our audience specifically. Can you explain how this healing is possible? I know, so they can cross the blood-brain barrier, and that's as
Yeah.
far as I got.
Well, I think that, when you have any kind of brain injury, there are a couple things that are going on. And this is actually true for any underlying health issue. What I started to realize when I originally got into nutrition, I was taught that everyone's bio-individual and that we're all different, and there really aren't any commonalities. You can't make any assumptions across the board. But then when you start seeing people in clinical practice, you start noticing patterns. You start noticing that everyone isn't necessarily responding to stress as well as they would like. They feel more in fight or flight than in rest and digest. You start noticing that their sleep is kind of compromised. You start noticing that they have symptoms of toxicity is the wrong word, but that the house isn't as clean as it could be.
Okay.
The garbage isn't leaving the body, and those three issues lend themselves well to essential oils. Specifically, any kind of injury, the main kind of information highway between the brain and the body, making sure that the brain is telling the body what to do, and that it's actually, that the body's giving appropriate signals back up. That is called the vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body that most people have never heard of. And it plays a really important role because it really does serve as kind of the safety gauge, the on-off switch between there's a danger present and your resources need to be allocated to keep you alive,
Okay.
versus you are safe. It's kind of like you have a party and you're not focusing on cleaning up the house, right? Because there are people in the house, there's a lot to do. Everyone goes home, then you can clean up the house, you can do the dishes, you can take out the trash, right? You can kind of do all those things that you were back burnering while there were more pressing things going on. And so what often happens, what lies at the root of most problems with healing, is that we're kind of stuck in the wrong gear. So many of us are stuck in that stress response state when there's no danger present, because we perceive there's a combination. It can be anticipatory stress, our worries, we're afraid of our finances, our health, our relationship, and our body can't differentiate between a lion chasing us down the street and a worry that our, relation, that we might get a divorce, that, we might lose our job, that our kid, seems to have more headaches than is normal for a child, that kind of stuff. And so when you're kind of prioritizing survival, you don't really prioritize anything that's not relevant to surviving that moment.
Right.
So you're not digesting your food and taking in the building blocks for health.
Mm.
You're not detoxifying your waste so it stays in your system and it's kind of a constant trigger to your immune system, which is constantly triggering inflammation, which then presents as symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, pain, all of these things that we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit for anyone that's ever, we did a biking trip before COVID with my best friend and her family, and they live in Chicago, which is pretty flat. And we were biking these hills in Italy. And one of the rest stops, her son was complaining, like, that's really hard. Those hills are hard. I'm like, well, are you downshifting? He didn't know he could shift gears. It didn't occur
Aw.
to him because he never needed to. And at the next stop, he's like, that's a game changer. And I
Aw.
think that what people don't realize is that you can shift gears. You can still have a lot going on in your life, a very stressful existence, but you can manually kind of shift yourself out of that fight or flight stress state into a state of relaxation where it's easier to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And the vagus nerve is the key.
Oh.
And just to understand kind of anatomically where it goes, it starts, it connects the brain to the body. So back of the head, winds around both sides behind the earlobe. And this is an important point. This is where it's the most accessible to the surface. In fact, there was some research, a New York neuroscientist named Kevin Tracy was surgically implanting a pacemaker-like device, like an electrical stimuli right there, and just testing it to stimulate the vagus nerve to help turn off stress.
Hmm.
And the results were so impressive that the FDA approved this for epilepsy, depression, and migraines. And, it's a little bit invasive. You actually need two surgeries because you need to implant the device, then you need to implant the battery, and the battery dies. And anyway, I realized stimulatory oils, like anyone that's ever put clove,
Mm-hmm.
peppermint, cinnamon, oregano, thyme, they feel hot. They're called hot oils. And that's because sometimes if you put them on your skin, it will make your skin red. It might feel hot to the touch because, they're hot. Like if you eat a chili pepper, it's hot. Your mouth is burning. It's a hot oil.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to calm that down is to use another oil, like anything in your kitchen, olive oil, coconut oil. Oil and water don't mix. If you eat a hot chili pepper and then you try to drink water, it's going to make it worse. If you have something fatty like milk and switch it around, it's better, right? But the reason it's hot, it's stimulating. It's actually going through the skin and causing a stimulatory reaction. So I started playing with stimulatory oils. And the punchline is that clove, which is super stimulatory, and lime, which has super small molecules, so it gets right through the skin and can be used as like an acupuncture needle. Well,
Hmm.
all you do to like shift gears for healing is put a little bit of clove and lime right behind your earlobe, right there. And that really kind of foundationally lays the groundwork for all the other healing to begin. And often, like any kind of head injury, can cause some kind of whiplash, and it can slightly throw off the vagus nerve and the ability to stimulate sympathetic or parasympathetic. So you get a little stuck. Your body kind of gets into this cycle where it's just thrown off and not back in balance. So just
Mm-hmm.
that one little hack can help put you back in balance so that so healing comes more easily.
Wow. So that's beautiful. Thank you for describing it that way to me. I can get it all.
Yeah.
So, well, I am curious, why clove and lime?
It's interesting, there's one of the measures of parasympathetic activity is your heart rate variability, how quickly your heart rate recovers. And there's this great device, it's called an Aura Ring, and it tracks your heart rate variability. So I tested a bunch of oils. Like originally I was thinking, oh, parasympathetic, relaxing. So I tried lavender and chamomile, and
Right.
it really didn't make a difference. And then
Oh.
I heard about the research, stimulating. I'm like, oh, what are the most stimulatory oils? So I guinea pigged myself. I started testing what happens when I use oregano, what happens when I use nutmeg, what happens when I use cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
Clove consistently tested the best
Wow.
across the board because it has some constituents. It has this constituent called eugenol. Constituent means like the chemical part of the plant. So different different plants have different chemicals, and it's interesting. Like most people don't realize a lot of plants are used for drugs. Like white
Right.
willow bark is aspirin. Valerian root is Valium.
Mm.
There's a constituent that's popular in lavender called linalool, and that is consistent with some of the antidepressants that are out there on the market. Like so many of the drugs that we, think of in a little bottle and that have been processed, you can find kind of the counterparts in nature. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, what makes the drug work is these certain chemicals that balance, they either stimulate certain parts of the body or
Mm-hmm.
they sedate parts of the body. Like if you stimulate focus, that helps you pay attention, right? If
Right.
it stimulate kind of calm and relaxation, that helps you with recovery. So that's really what you're doing. And eugenol is really balancing. Like one thing, there's a term, for herbs called adaptogenic, and what that means is that they put you in balance. Like one of the measures for stress is a saliva test where they measure this stress hormone called cortisol, and it's a 24-hour test because cortisol is not a flatline experience. It's supposed to be high in the morning so that you get energy, and
Mm-hmm.
then before bed it's supposed to be lower so that it doesn't interfere with your sleep.
Okay.
And if you're trying, if you take a test, you'll see it's not a flat line. Often it's when it's supposed to be high, it's low. When it's supposed to be low, it's high. It's just out of balance. And
Okay.
so these adaptogenic herbs, what they do is they kind of, if it's too high, they bring you up. If it's too low, they bring you down. It's like your favorite friend. If you're in a great mood, they're excited with you. If you're having a really bad day, they're compassionate for you. They just meet you where you're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Help you to feel better. And so that's one of the balancing acts that these aspects of plants do, is they just help return you to balance. And so clove in particular is really powerful in that regard. It has a number, they talk about antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, all these
Mm-hmm.
kind of immune supportive properties. But a lot of oils have anti-anxiety properties, basically calming and
Yeah.
balancing properties.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's maybe why they're used in spas a lot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, that's where I'm probably the most, if I'm not using them at home all the time, then the things that come to my mind are when they put them right underneath your face when you're going to get a massage or something. Um, so do they have to be on your skin or on that nerve or somewhere specific for them to be effective? Is
There's no wrong.
smelling them just as effective?
Smelling is just as effective. I mean, there are a lot of ways. I think people make them complicated, and you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to. You
Yeah.
can literally just open a bottle and smell it. That's called direct inhalation. Some people like to put it in diffusers and put it in the entire room. But basically, there's no wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
What I was trying to do in the book is just give more specific ways.
Yeah.
What I found, especially for people who, are chronically ill or have been almost throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
And sometimes they feel like they've wasted time, money, and energy, or they're afraid to do things wrong. I tried to give a really clear, like, this is, if you like to know exactly what to do, here's exactly what to do. But I do think that there's a lot of power in trusting what smells good to you.
Mm.
People, especially for brain injuries, talk about frankincense because it seems to be, for some reason, it attracts more oxygen, and oxygen in the brain supports healing. That's why hyperbaric chambers are good, why exercise is good. Yeah, but sometimes frankincense doesn't smell good to you. And I think people worry, they feel like, oh, I don't like it, but maybe that means I need it. And I really want to empower people with the recall that you don't, if you think something smells bad, you're not going to eat it, right?
Yeah.
Trust yourself.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
what smells good to you is good for you, and what doesn't smell good is not something you need. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not attracted to it, you probably don't need it.
Right. That's good advice. Okay. So, what are the 5 steps to regaining control of your health as you write in your book?
Yeah, I think being able to kind of turn on your parasympathetic nervous system, and that
Okay.
ability to feel is really important.
Hmm.
Sleep is really important. It's when, the brain detoxifies and cleans house, making sure that the garbage leaves the body. I lived in New York during garbage strikes. It wasn't fun. Making sure that once you kind of mobilize things that might be turning on your immune system and inflammation, they leave. Making sure you have energy to heal, that you're not exhausted all the time, because when you're really tired, it's hard to do anything. When you have more energy, then more possibilities open up. And then,
Well, I have a question there. How do
go.
you make sure you have more energy?
Yeah, the levers for energy in the body are really the thyroid. Often, like people who tell me, like, I'm hot all the time or I'm cold all the time, I'm gaining weight, I'm losing weight, I'm exhausted. That's often thyroid related. That's
Hmm.
kind of the metabolic catalyst in the body. And
Hmm.
then also your adrenal glands. It's basically it's these energy hormones like adrenaline and cortisol that make you feel either like awake and jittery, and too much of that can make you feel anxious and overwhelmed, right? There's so much energy and you almost don't know where to put it, or you're so tired that you're pretty much mainlining coffee all day long.
Hmm.
So there's a way to kind of return the thyroid and the adrenals to balance so that you have more energy to make it through the day.
Okay, so look at your thyroid health then.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, I cut you off. What was the fifth one?
Oh, just modulating your immune system. I think what tends to happen is the immune system either overreacts. So everything is, perceived as a threat. It's like um, you're walking through the woods and every stick looks like a snake and you're reacting all the time.
Yeah.
Or it's underreacting. You never get a cold, you never get sick, and suddenly, you get diagnosed with cancer or something. So just helping to return that system to balance.
Hmm. Wow. I guess I don't really think much about the underreacting thing. When people
Most
tell me
people
they
don't.
never get sick, then I
Yeah.
think like, oh, you must be so healthy.
Yeah, that tends to be like one of the things most people don't realize is that when your body thinks it's in danger, when it's stressed all the time, the immune system really turns off. So you never get colds, you never really even I have a good friend that falls into this category. She broke her collarbone one time and didn't even really experience the pain. Like it's sad because our society really admires kind of that type A hard charging
Right.
personality, but sometimes there's a lot of delayed maintenance that we don't realize.
Yeah, until something's wrong,
Yeah,
unfortunately. Well,
yeah,
hopefully we can bring some awareness one conversation at a time, one book at a time here.
exactly. I hope so.
Um, okay. So I'm trying to decide if this, how do essential oils facilitate each step of that healing that you described? I don't know if that's
Yeah.
kind of something that you can
No,
answer or not.
oh, absolutely. It's funny when I was working with kids, I started noticing, so many of my friends say things like, I go to this doctor and I spend $1,000 on supplements and then I never really take them. And
Oh,
I think that what it is if you don't really know what something does, it doesn't really matter. But if you suddenly realize, like, oh, the reason, I love baseball and I do a much better job of hitting the ball and scoring runs when I have the ability to focus, when I can like really pay attention as opposed to being distracted. Because when you're distracted, you might not notice the ball is coming towards you and you might not catch it, right?
mhm.
So if you can explain to someone when you smell, it's this part of your brain that helps you focus so that you can catch that ball and notice that ball. And when you smell, that wakes that up. So if you smell this, you're going to do better in your baseball games. They're like, well, I want to do better in the baseball games, so of course I'm going to smell it. And then they're much more likely to like do it and execute it. So the book is divided in three parts. The first part really details what essential oils are, how they work in the brain, the history of them and why they're useful.
Right.
And then the second part kind of delves into what does each of these five steps mean. And I apologize if I was too complicated. I had an editor who helped me make it much more accessible in the book. So it really helps you understand, like, oh, if I'm not sleep, if I have trouble falling asleep, this is why. If I'm waking up at 1 in the morning and I'm wide awake, this is why. If I wake up at 3 and maybe I use the bathroom and I'm a little groggy, but I can go back to bed, this is why. And helps you really understand, like, oh, what this is what's going on for me, and connect the dots
Mm-hmm.
so that you can then say, okay, I want the benefit of sleeping through the night, because sometimes if I wake up and I'm wide awake, I'm really tired around 4 in the afternoon the next day. And so then these are the steps you can take, with the hope that, it gets very specific and detailed, but the goal is that people will recognize themselves in the pages and better understand why things aren't working the way they want them to, so that they can then, see the benefit of following a protocol that will help them get back in balance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you founded Vibrant Blue Oils.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that journey and why these are different than other essential oils on the market?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of great companies, and I think everyone has great quality. I just was making my own blends because I feel like if you start actually looking at the research, all the research looks at blends much more than single oils, because when you combine things, it's like, you can absolutely just eat an apple and that's fantastic. But sometimes you go to a restaurant and they put an apple in a salad in a way that you never would have thought of, and it's even better.
Right.
So I didn't see anyone doing this. I didn't see anyone combining oils in a way that I thought was really supportive of different organ systems and regions of the brain. And so I just kind of filled a gap that I saw was wide open.
Mm-hmm.
I use essential oils that are organic whenever that organic certification is available, because they are the concentrated essences of plants. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're concentrating pesticides, that's, not as healthy as it could be.
Yeah, yeah. And then isn't third-party testing also important with
Well,
essential
I mean, it's
oils?
kind of, I do it. It's like a matter of routine, but
Right.
it's a little bit like, organic farming, right? If you're growing vegetables in your own garden and what you're putting in the soil and how often you're watering, you could test to make sure that there's no pesticides, but it's unlikely that you're going to find problems. So
Right.
we always test, but because we have such an integrated relationship with our farmers and we know how the products are grown and cared for, uh, in 10 years of doing this, I've never had an alarming test result come back.
So I'm curious, where are your farmers? Are they from
We-
all different places, or do you primarily
Yeah.
use like
Well,
one?
no, no, no. I mean, certain oils, like helichrysum is from Corsica, blue tansy is from Morocco, you
Right.
know, frankincense
Okay.
is from the Middle East. You really need to, different soil and different climates yield different products.
Okay.
There's a reason that you buy wine from France and California and certain regions of the world where they get certain climate and certain weather, you know. So no, we source from all over the world.
Okay. Um, do you have any favorite easy to make tips or recipes that you could share with the Brain Possible audience? Maybe knowing that well, before you even answer, I automatically am curious for it was your son, right? Who,
Yeah.
yeah, like what supports attention and
Yeah,
focus?
it's really, I mean, peppermint and rosemary are the ones that test the best. But with kids especially, I say just take them to, a supermarket that has essential oils and let them smell. Orange, the citrus oils are really uplifting. And most kids love orange or grapefruit or lemon. But what my favorite tip is actually, it's to balance anxiety attacks. And what's interesting, there's a whole branch of chiropractic called functional neurology, and they're looking at the different parts of the brain. Most people group the brain together like it's just a brain, it's one thing, but different parts do different things, right? And they're two hemispheres, and sometimes when they're out of balance, that produces a symptom like anxiety. Like the
Mhm.
right hemisphere is known as the ruminating hemisphere, and the left hemisphere is the liberating hemisphere. So when the right hemisphere, especially the right forehead area, starts getting overactive, that you might experience as a panic attack or an anxiety attack.
Okay.
So the fastest way to nip that in the bud is to activate the left hemisphere, balance the two, and then you feel better. The easiest way to do that is to smell anything. It can even be, essential oils are in the peel of the citrus. So peel a tangerine, smell that, smell any oil under your left nostril. You can plug your right nostril if you want to. 3 to 7 breaths. It calms, stimulates the left hemisphere, balances the two brain hemispheres, and you will feel better immediately. And it's
Wow.
additive and cumulative. If you or someone that you love has a lot of anxiety attacks, the more you can default to just smelling something through the left nostril, the less likely they are to occur.
That's a really good tip. This is kind of random, but I've been wondering this, and you might know. But so if you're diffusing essential oils, but you also have an air purifier on in the same room, I've been wondering if that just kind of cancels the essential oils out. I don't know if anyone else thinks about this, but I have both.
No, I think they do different things, actually. I think that the air purifier is kind of grabbing toxins. I think that one of the things with diffusing, I mean, you have to think about it. It's like, if when you're I don't get period cramps anymore, but when I used to, I was popping Advil probably every hour, you know, and that's probably not so good. You don't necessarily need to over medicate. So if you're diffusing, I would say just do it for 20 minutes twice a day, like limit the time span. But what you're
Okay.
doing when you're diffusing is you're kind of putting positive things in the air, and the particles are really small. When you're air filtering, you're kind of pulling the toxins from the air. You're cleaning the air. So in a way, they're doing the same thing and they're supporting each other. It's not necessarily offsetting.
Okay.
With the air filter, you're getting a lot of dust, you're getting the mycotoxins, things like that.
Um, Another one that I've been kind of curious about is, do you have a preference on like a diffuser that goes like straight up the the steam or the mist, whatever you call it, versus, do they, if they're not going directly at me, sometimes I'm like, I don't really smell that. If it's just going, my diffuser and the steam is just going up and it's next to me on my nightstand, but if it's not like me sniffing it, I don't really.
That's interesting. It's funny, I can open a bottle of peppermint on the other side of the house and smell it. So
Wow.
um, I think that's personal preference. I
Hmm.
think if you can't smell it when it's going straight up, then for you personally, it would be better to have something that you can smell. But I don't think that's a one size fits all answer. How much
Okay.
salt you want on your food, it's different for everyone.
Hmm. Okay. So, Jodi, where can our listeners find out more about your work and also find your book?
Yeah, if they go to boostthebrainbook.com/gift, they can get a free chapter that basically gives a lot of strategies to kind of calm stress. And then they can find me at vibrantblueoils.com. And if you have any questions, if I was too complicated, just email me at info@vibrantblueoils.com and we'll get back to you within 24 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation today and that you learned something new. Do you have a question for Jodi? Do you use aromatherapy already in your home? If so, what will you change or add? And if not, where will you start? We would love to hear from you. Email us at info@thebrainpossible.com. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share our podcast if that feels true for you. You may also consider visiting our website for more information on stories, therapies, and products that we think that you will love. As always, thank you for spending your precious time with us at The Brain Possible. Be well.